Hey guys, Dr. Alison Bremner here with Cultivating Success. This podcast is about business and mindset and how to get you guys successful, and more specifically, gearing towards newer docs and recent graduates. And I try to bring you guys information that you can use easily, whether you're an associate or you want to open your own practice. So, really excited to bring you some information today. We drop this podcast on the first and third Monday. So, first of all, I just like to again talk about how I'm pretty easy to access. You can email me, you can DM me on Instagram, you can find me on my website. And I had a student reach out to me, and she was asking if I could send over my associate reading list, which I was definitely happy to do. And then I always ask students that reach out to me, what do you want to hear? Like, what are the things that you think are not getting covered, or information that I might have partly covered that you want more in-depth detail? And so the student from Life University, Alexis, I appreciate you reaching out. And she said to me, one thing that is really never taught is how to ask for money, or difficult conversations that you might have, with people who don't see the value in, well, chiropractic or your service specifically, want to use insurance, or, don't want to continue to come in for care after they're feeling better. And so I'm really excited to go over this. I can't believe I haven't covered this already. I think we've talked a little bit about money, and we've talked a little bit about mindset, and we talked a little bit about target market, which all have to do with this topic. So that's what we're going to talk about today: how to ask for money and charge what you're worth, and some conversations that you're going to have to have. Now, I will admit to you that I sort of feel like an outsider in chiropractic, because I don't use the same language that I hear a lot of people, especially on the stage, talk about. I talk about things that really, for some reason, are not talked about, which I think are super important. So a lot of times when I'm around a bunch of chiropractors, I feel a little like an outsider, or like I'm going to offend somebody or rub someone the wrong way, because I use words that aren't just, used over and over again in chiropractic. And, quite frankly, it really frustrates me of some of the crap that is just over and over again talked about and used. And quite frankly, sometimes it's just these lies that are told to you guys. And then what happens is you guys get into practice and you find out that, well, maybe some of the stuff that they're talking about isn't as important as I thought it was. Or, I should be learning and researching some other stuff. It's interesting when I do a podcast, I always sort of talk about the book I'm reading right now and what's going on in my life. And I always apply it to my business and to this podcast, because I think that I'm always looking to see how to get potential and improve other people and myself. I play a lot of sports. One of the sports that I play right now is called Australian rules football. It is not rugby, but it is full contact tackling. Now, I love this sport because it's such a team sport, and it's such a wackadoodle game of mistakes, meaning that if you're super athletic, you can play this game pretty easily, and you're never ever going to win the game with having a couple good players. You really have to play as a team. Now, our team in Denver used to win all the time. We won 6 national championships in a row. In the last 6 years, we have lost to San Francisco. And what really happened was we lost our coach, and we sort of been discombobulated. And I like winning. I'm not sure if you've picked up on that. I'm pretty competitive. And man, I just got really sick of losing. You might wonder, what the heck does this have to do with the podcast today? Well, what I have found is, when I decided, hey, I'm sick of losing, so obviously the only thing I can do is coach the team. So I coach and play, which is pretty challenging to do, because I still have to get out there and perform and still try to coach everyone in their position. And the thing that I found, which is the most difficult, was not actually coaching the girls. So when I came to ask the program, hey, I want to take this over, but I'm going to do it my way, and you're probably not going to like some of the changes that I want to do, because I'm a big person of the truth. Let's just be honest about what we need to do, and let's change the way that this culture is, because the reason that we're losing is because of the culture. It has nothing really to do with our talent. It has to do with we're not being coached properly. And they sort of pushed back, and they said, okay, you know what? We actually don't have anyone to coach, so we're just going to let you do it. And I've been coaching for 2 or 3 weeks now, and we have had a drastic change in the way the girls are playing, how much we're getting people to show up to practice, new players that are coming over from other teams that absolutely love the way we're running practice. We are going to be a phenomenal team. Now, Who I have a problem with and who tries to kind of, I would say, get in my way of success is the board and leadership. Every time that I implement something, the girls love it. They tell me I get great feedback. But the people who don't love it are the people in the board. So people who are like, oh, this is the rule and this is the way it has to be. And oh, we can't do that. And every time I come up with a solution, they find another problem. So I find that this happens in chiropractic. I feel like I'm like, hey guys, this is an amazing thing that you need to focus on. Let's talk about business, talk about mindset. And then I get met with like, oh, well, you're not really about chiropractic. Like you're selfish and you don't believe in service. And chiropractic is about being of service. And I can't believe you're talking about these principles. And I'm like dumbfounded because I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm trying to help people. And the interesting thing is the feedback I get from students and young docs is, thank you so much for talking about this. We love this so much because we're not really getting it. And so it's very similar, I feel like, to footy because like the people who I'm trying to help actually really do like this stuff. But the problem is when I try to bring this information, like I just, I don't get invited to speak to things, and I'm trying to get on more stages and present this information. But a lot of people in chiropractic, for whatever reason, do not want to talk about this or don't want me talking about this. So that's a little rant I had. I appreciate you listening, but I want to talk about this because one of the things that I feel like happens is getting money from people and running a successful business is one of the things that is the most important thing. If you can't make money, I don't care how big your heart is or how many people you want to serve. You can't serve anyone if you can't keep the lights on. So let's talk about how to be successful. And one of the big things is money conversations and getting people to pay for your service. I think that we do a big disservice in chiropractic by undercharging, giving things away for free, and not thinking that chiropractic is worth as much as it is. So I think this is one of the biggest reasons why chiropractors fail. Now, it's whether you're an associate or running your own business, is that they are so uncomfortable with having money conversations and talking about money that they just can't make enough money because they're undercharging, they're working to death. And I see people on stage saying, oh, we're seeing 100 people a day. And I'm like, well, that's great. I'm glad you're seeing a lot of people, but how much are you charging? And if the answer is like $20 or something very low, then that's just ridiculous. I don't care. It's like, who cares you're seeing a bunch of people? Like, you should see people, however many you want to see, whether it's a high volume, great. If that's not a high volume, that's also great. But man, we got to charge a little bit more for our service because chiropractic changes people's lives. It's amazing. And so it's worth a lot of money. And so one of the things that I think that really fires me up, it just like makes me so angry, is like these ridiculous things I hear all the time. And quite frankly, they are lies. And here is the biggest lie in chiropractic. All you have to do is be good at adjusting and be of service, and you'll be successful. That is crap. That is not true. Now, don't get me wrong. You should be of service and you should be an amazing adjuster and you should work on your craft. But if you do not think about business, if you do not think about money, if you do not think about these things, you are going to nosedive. And I'm reading a book right now called Profits First. And I've been meaning to read it, and it's just kind of been on my list. And I had someone recently reach out to me that wants to be on my podcast, and he is a Profits First coach. So you can do this program and become certified to be a coach. And he said, hey, I'd love to be on your podcast, talk to chiropractors about how they can look at their business and think about their profits. And I was like, oh man, I've been wanting to read that book. And I've started the book, and some of the things are just so valuable for chiropractors. So right now, I would say I would recommend this book to you. And it talks about how you really need to look at your business as thinking about your profits. Because what happens, and this happens in chiropractic a lot, people are growing, 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 right? They take in the money, they're putting it back into the business, they're buying a bunch of stuff, they'll make more money, they buy more stuff. And so they have $1 million practice, but they're spending $1,001,000. Now, I mean, that's great that you're making all kinds of money, but it becomes you're a slave to this office that is just generating a lot of money. You're spending a lot of money and really going nowhere because you just over and over again doing this process. And if you aren't looking at your finances and understanding where that's going and actually paying yourself, it doesn't matter how many people that you see or how much money you make, because if you don't have the discipline to keep that money, then it's going to be a never ending nightmare for you. So, the thing that they talk about is we look at businesses typically like sales minus expenses equal profit. And what they found is actually it's got to be the opposite of that, which is sales minus your profit. That's going to equal your expenses and what you're trying to figure out how much you can pay yourself and how much you can actually spend. Because I know what happens is you hear this in chiropractic a lot. It's like, oh, well, just go buy this big fancy thing, or oh, you need this expensive equipment, or oh, just get a bigger office, or just do this and just do that. And you're just constantly spending money without actually even making money. And so the reason I'm talking about this is it plays into just first of all the mindset, because if we're talking about how to get people to pay for your services, the very first thing you got to do is you got to fix your mindset and start thinking about money and not shy away from it. Because that's what happens is I think people think, well, I'm just going to get into, I'm going to open my own office and I'm just going to give great adjustments and I'm just going to put my all into it. And then the business part will come. I'll learn how to do that when I'm in business. And I'm going to tell you that that is a mistake. Like you are going to get eaten alive. And what's crazy is I was reading this book and he talks about like how stressed out and like terrible most entrepreneurs feel. Like their stress levels like off the charts, like 10 out of 10. And I was thinking to myself, like, when I think about the stress in my business, it's like a 3. I was working on my yard and wasn't even thinking about my office at all. And, I'm not saying I have everything figured out, but I have created a system in my business that serves me. I don't serve it. So I work 3 days a week. I travel a lot. I play sports and I get associates in my office so that they're successful and so I can have time. Because at the end of the day, like, what is the point of having a business? I mean, it should be because you want freedom. It should be because you want to make your own decisions and be your own boss. And if those things aren't important to you, then like, why own a business? That makes no sense to me. And so I think that the very first thing, if we're talking about money conversations that you're going to be having with people, is you got to get comfortable around money. And you got to first change your mindset because, in society, we are taught to think that money is bad, or rich people are bad, or rich people must have done something evil to get that money. And so, well, I don't want money because why would I want to be this evil person? I talk about the villain in the movie. Who is the villain? It's always some rich guy in a mansion, right? So I think that the very first thing you gotta do is change your mindset a bit. And we've done a couple podcasts on this. There's a mindset podcast that I did with a money coach and just talking about how you can start changing your thought process around money. That's the very first thing that you're going to need to do if you're going to actually be able to ask for money and ask for fair compensation for your services. The next step that you're going to need to do is figure out your target market. And I know we've talked about this a lot. I think I've had multiple podcasts on thinking about your target market. And when we're talking about target market, ideal client is a better way to put it. That is who you are meant to serve. And, the student, that she texted me and she was saying, in school, they tell us to treat from womb to tomb. I've never heard of that before. I don't know where I've been, but that means obviously from like the second someone's born until they die. Like they just say that's your target market, which is absolutely absurd. Like that's the same thing as saying, who would be a good referral for you? Anyone with a spine. Like, what are you talking about? Like, that is a horrible message. Like, you're just never going to get that message across. It's confusing. It's too broad. And when people are confused, they're just not going to refer anyone to you. So I think that it is easier to ask for money in a niche market. So if you're a specialty of some sort in chiropractic, it will be easier. So I'm upper cervical, but that's not the only that's not the only specialty. I mean, you could be pediatrics, you could be sports, you could be, strictly neuro, you can be a lot of different things. And the more you can kind of whittle that down to knowing exactly what you do, that is going to be easier to figure out your target market. And so, I'm not going to talk a whole ton on this because I have another podcast about it, but like thinking about who you do your best work with isn't necessarily who you want to be best friends with. My target market is like middle-aged women who are dealing with vertigo and migraines. Like that is really what it's at. These people, I would not want to hang out with these people at all on a social event. But in my office, it's a perfect fit. It's perfect because they love the environment, they love the experience, and I love it because they show up to their appointments, they pay me a lot of money, and we get great results. And so it works out wonderful as far as being my ideal client for the office. So I would really encourage you to start thinking about your ideal client. Book Yourself Solid, as I've mentioned before, is a great book on how to figure that out. Now, I understand the reality is in the beginning, you're going to take some people that probably are not your target market. your ideal client, because the thing is, you're just trying to get people in the door. I understand that. I get that. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about how you're going to be able to ask for money and maybe even someone that's not your ideal client, because you're going to have to do it in the beginning. And as you get more and more successful and see more and more people, you can start to be more and more picky about who comes into your doors. I mean, like, I've gotten to a point now when we get a web form lead, someone wants to come in, I can read that email and be like, this person is difficult. And I will send them to court. And I will tell him, I said, hey, man, this person's difficult, just so you know. And he's like, okay, because he's in his first year. So he's going to take some more difficult people. And as he gets, more into practice, he will take less difficult. You can ask Dr. Colby when she was in my office, when she first started, she saw more difficult people, or for whatever reason, difficult for me might be different than difficult for you. And she would see those people in the beginning because she's trying to build her business. So I understand that in the beginning, you kind of have to take some people that you normally might not take. So, how do you get these people to convert to care, to pay for care, and hopefully stay around? Now, I think the very first thing that you should be thinking about is scripting. And I know that you guys probably really, you hear script, you're like, oh God, robotic, I'm going to have to, like, say things I don't want to say. And that's not true at all. So, a script just means something that you're saying every single time, and you can make it up yourself. As long as you're saying the same thing and you're focused on what matters to them. You're focused on the benefits, not the features. Here's an example. The benefit is you're going to be able to go to your kid's recital and not worry if you're going to have a migraine. The feature is we do upper cervical, and this is a laser aligned, digital x-ray, and along with we're going to take infrared thermography and blah, blah, blah. Like, that is, they don't care at all. What they care about is how it benefits them. How is the experience going to benefit them and make their life better? If you can get really good at understanding what the experience is and what your ideal client wants and being able to articulate that, especially in their day one. I know you're taught, and the ROF is where you're selling them. Not true at all. You're selling them on the very first interaction they have with you. If you can get very good at articulating what they're thinking in their head, you'll be very good at getting them to give you a lot of money and love you and stay forever. Pre-screening on the phone. Now, again, me, I am on the phone with someone to see if they're going to be difficult. And if they are, then I send them to another associate. Or if I think that they're just really going to be negative, bring negative energy, and then I just send them away to another office. So another thing I think of is, like, some people are just not meant for your office, and it's okay to just let them go. Or, like, if someone's like, the very first, I just got a web form that's like, hi, my name's Katie. I want to use Cigna insurance. And I'm like, okay, then you should not come to this office. Like, I'm not even going to try to convert that person. Like, if they're the first thing out of their mouth, and not a question like, hey, do you take insurance? Because that can just be like a, hey, I have, it's like, if you, hey, I have this expired coupon. I don't think you really take it, but I'm just going to ask if you take it. That's sometimes what people are asking with the insurance. Like, hey, I know that you probably don't take this. I'm just wondering. Like, good. That's like, oh, you know what? We don't take that. And they say, oh, yeah, I figured that you didn't. And it's fine. And they're going to come in the office. But someone, like, specifically is like, I have this insurance. I'm only going to see a chiropractor that sees this insurance. Like, I'm not even going to waste my breath on that. I'm just going to, okay, you should go to this office. Like, send them away. They don't need to be in your office. And then, again, someone that's like, oh, my last chiropractor only charged me $40 and you want me to pay $140 for initial. And we're like, and that's for full spine, not for upper cervical, but for full spine. Um, we're like, no, we're not gonna only charge $40. That's nuts. And if you want to see me, that's like $300. And no, we don't do any adjusting the first day. And the thing about that is, when you're really solid in who you know and how much you charge, even though that person might not come into your office, I promise you the energy of that, two more people that fit perfectly into your office will come in. So I think pre-screening people on the phone is super helpful, because you're going to answer a lot of their questions that they might have, or preconceived notions that they have about chiropractic. Because one of the things you have to fight against is they might have had a wackadoodle experience in their office, because chiropractors do crazy things as far as, like, the public is concerned, like the public image of chiropractic. They might come into an office and then, they come in, they're like, you have a subluxation, you're gonna die. Say it with me, subluxation. And then the patient is like, this person's crazy. And, like, by no means by, like, saying you shouldn't be a principal chiropractor. I mean, I'm a principled straight chiropractor. Yes, we, detect subluxations and remove them. But that's language I'm using to you or languaging to another chiropractor. I wouldn't say it to a patient. That's crazy. That sounds nuts. So something you have to combat is if they had a crazy experience. And so you want to right away sort of saying, hey, have you been to a chiropractor before? And they will probably tell you some ridiculous story. And you have to just say, okay, we don't do that here. And they're going to be like, oh, thank God. And then they're going to be super stoked because right there, you already got one of their objections. You admitted to them that, hey, that might have been a weird experience. We're going to make sure that we're going to take care of you and that will not happen here. So I think that that's really important to explain that to them. So talking about environment, another thing that just drives me bananas is that you guys are taught that people pay because you're getting quote unquote a good adjustment or, oh, this person is the best adjuster. And so that's why they're paying a high price. Nothing could be further from the truth. Most people have no idea what a good adjustment is and a not good adjustment is. No idea. And again, I'm not saying to be a bad adjuster or to be a bad doctor, but what I am saying is that the most important thing for them to pay you a lot of money is to make an experience, an environment that they love. So, like, your office should be like a spa. I mean, for me, like, because that's my ideal client. I mean, but here's the truth of the matter. Most ideal clients for chiropractic are like women in their 30s and 40s and 50s. But, if you're a sports chiropractor, then you might want your office to, like, I don't know, have the playoff game on and like have some like cool stuff that you athletes would like. It doesn't have to be medical. It just has to be that type of person that comes into your office is going to be like, dude, this is awesome. I love this office. Or if you're a pediatric office, your office is very kid friendly, like a kid area. You make sure that your hours are for like moms and make sure that it's okay if the kid's like running around and screaming. Like my office, dear God, like that would be the worst thing I could possibly think of. But your office is different than my office. So making sure that the environment that you have, they should walk into the office and say, oh, I belong here. Like this is made for me because it is made for them. Those are the people that you want in your office. So, want to make sure that they're having a great experience and people pay for experience. Let me give you an example. I'm sure that there's something like this in your neighborhood or in your city. Think of like a restaurant with like phenomenal food, but the service is terrible and like the environment is terrible. Like they basically have no matching tables with no matching folding chairs, and they'll serve you like a warm beer or something like that. But the food is phenomenal. When I think about this, it's like this Ethiopian place that I absolutely love. And all the Ethiopian people who live in Denver go to this place called the Nile, and the food is phenomenal. But I'll tell you, when I take people there, I said, okay, don't come if you're super hungry because it's going to be an hour before we get the food. And then they're going to probably forget something. You're going to have to remind them again. And that kind of thing is a shit show. But at the same time, the food is just absolutely phenomenal and I just love it. However, what do you think the price is for that food? It's cheap. It's inexpensive because the people who are running it are just thinking about like, here's authentic food. I don't really care about, customer service or anything like that. You're coming here for the food. Now think about the opposite. There's a place that I love in Denver called Ophelia's. Now, the food's not bad. The food's pretty good. I think the food's pretty good. But the experience of this place, the food is ridiculously expensive for what it is. You get these tiny little plates that are like you have to order like 5 things to even like fill up a meal. And every time I've gone there, I've spent like, $300 for like a tiny meal and like one drink. But it used to be a brothel and they have this amazing environment and it's like a raised seating and then underneath is like a stage because what they used to do is like bring out hookers and then Denver used to be this like seedy place back in the early 1900s and now they've like changed all these places that were industrial buildings and it's like such a cool environment that I go because there's like really cool bands that go play and it's just a fun experience but it's expensive and the food is decent, it's pretty good. But why do I go and why do people love it so much? Because they're paying for the experience that they're having in the office and the history of the building and they have all kinds of like cool stuff that go along with it. So if you can start thinking about your business like the rest of the people who own businesses, which is they understand that their ideal client wants a certain experience. So, I mean, I know that you probably wanted some like simple answers like do this and people will pay you money and do that. But the reality is you have to figure out how to market to people, how to talk to people. That's really what it is you understand people's psychology. I think that one thing I really love to like talk about all the time is like the reason that people do things because people they're weird. They're weird creatures and they make decisions on emotion. I mean, all people make decisions on emotion, including yourself. Even if you think that you don't make a decision on emotion, I guarantee you that you do. And I mean, I like to think that I'm a pretty logical person, but like, so I play in this old lady basketball league, and we play like once a week. And I was like, oh man, I'm going to get new shoes. And do you think that I need like brand new Jordans? No, I don't. But emotionally, I was thinking, oh, I really want these shoes. And I really love Luca, who plays for the Mavericks. And the shoe was super cool. It was like a retro neon green, pink, like mostly white. And I was like, I'm gonna buy this shoe. And like it was totally an emotional buy. Like I did not need these shoes. Like it's an old lady league. I don't even need performance anymore. Like, it's ridiculous. But emotionally, I wanted the shoe. I got the shoe. I bought it and I paid a lot of money for it. And that's how most people are making their decisions, even when it comes to health. They're making an emotional decision. So if you can emotionally attach to these people and figure out and listen to what they're saying, they're going to pay you a bunch of money. And here's like a little tip too is like, imagine like most of these people that come to my office, upper cervical, like I said, we see a lot of neurological things like migraines and vertigo and like chronic pain. Most of these people have been to a dozen other medical people. And so you have to think about like, what was that experience for them? The experience for them in that other office was one, they did not listen to them. Two, they had to wait like 6 months to even get into the specialist that then again didn't listen to them and said, there's nothing wrong with you. And they're feeling really disempowered, right? Because what happens is they're like, well, your CT is normal, your blood work's normal. Sorry, there's nothing we can do. And then they leave and they're just like, well, what should I do? And they're like, we have no idea. Here's a pill. Sorry. So understanding that that was their experience, when they come into your office and you listen to them and say, I can help you and you're going to be feeling a whole lot better, instead of like shoving down some chiropractic education to them and just say, hey, I understand that you're frustrated. We're going to help you and this is going to be great. You're definitely in the right place, the right fit. Emotionally, they're like, yes, I'm going to do this. I just had a patient come in and she just has all kinds of weird symptoms like swelling in her face, neck pain, headaches, vertigo. And she's been to every single doctor already, and they're like, we can't help you. And so she found us on the internet because we do a lot of online stuff. And I was basically like, yeah, your nervous system is all messed up and we need to fix this. It's going to take 6 months and that's going to be like $3,000. And she's like, great. And when she came back from her report, she was like, I was so excited to start care today and I'm going to start care. But my husband like doesn't really quite see the correlation. Now, most chiropractors would be like, well, bring him in and we're going to educate him and we're going to show you why. And I was like, huh, yeah, well, he doesn't really understand. And she's like, well, I don't care because I told him that he's not a doctor and I'm really excited about care. So like basically screw him. And I was like, great, awesome. And I said to her, that's the reason we don't see a whole lot of male patients. And then she laughed. And then she like even more, like that made her want to come into care even more. Because what I didn't do was like, well, let me tell you why your husband's wrong and bring him in. And I'm going to like, wag my finger at him and make him feel like an idiot. Because of the reality, there's nothing I can say to him. If he thinks that this isn't going to help, then why the heck would I bring him in and then cause a problem in the relationship? And so these are the things that chiropractors do that's just like total bonkers. Like you don't need to educate them. Like you just don't need to. You need to empower them. You need to tell them they're in the right place and then they will love you because yes, they are going to start to feel better. And so yes, they are going to quote unquote get it, but what they're going to get is that they're messed up and you're going to help them. So asking for money. Here's the thing. You got to get good at it now. You can't just get into your office and decide, "Oh, I'm going to start learning how to ask for money." You can start when you're in school. Here's how you can start. When your friends are thinking about where they're going for, dinner. You guys are all going out to dinner. And everyone's kind of saying, "Well, maybe we should go here. We'll get Chinese. No, let's get sushi. No, let's get Mexican." You need to start saying, "We're going to go here." And everyone's going to be like, "Okay." And so you're going to start making these decisions and getting people to do what you want them to do and being confident with them. Not like, "Oh, yeah, maybe we could get Mexican. I can see that like this place, that's a good idea. But actually I kind of like this place. And oh, but last time we went there, it was like this and that. And oh, but there's parking." Like you just need to start being very decisive and just start telling people what to do. Because at the end of the day, that's what they want. When they come into your office, you need to tell them what to do because they need and want to be told what to do. Again, back to my Australian rules football. When I came and saying I'm going to coach, and they're like, well, we need to ask the team. And I said, no, you do not. And they're like, well, what if people don't want to do it? And I said, well, if they don't want to do it, then they're free to leave. And so they were like thinking I'm some sort of like dictatorship. But I said, hey guys, I'll tell you what, they just want to be told what to do. And giving them like, oh, what's your opinion? And what's your opinion? All that does is it waters down the message and there's no singular leader. And what happens is we will lose. There's no way we can win because we're not all buying into the same vision. And that's what it is. Your office, that's your vision. You're steering the ship and everyone else is along for the ride. You're not asking your patients, oh, well, would you want to come in? I'm not usually here on Tuesdays, but I could be here on Tuesdays if you need me to be. Or, oh, well, normally I charge, this, but, for you, I guess I could charge that. Like, no, no, you are steering the ship. They're along for the ride. And if they're not along for the ride, they can get off. And I know that sounds harsh, like you're not like helping people, but the reality is the more that you do that, the more that you're like, this is the way it's going. I'm the leader here. The more they're going to trust in you and just let go. And you are going to get better results because they're not going to fight you on it. They're just like, hey, I'm here. I'm here to listen to what you want to tell me, and I'm here to get better. So practicing that right now in your life is super, super important. Another thing that you can also start doing right now is, talking about money openly. I think that it's like we're afraid to talk about money all the time. And so then it's very uncomfortable, right? When you all of a sudden you got to talk about money all the time. And, one of the things I really advocate for is not having a front desk person. There is no reason for any of you to have a front desk person. Maybe if you're taking insurance, I don't know, because I've never done that. That sounds like a nightmare. But having a front desk person, here's what's happening. Two things. One, you first start, you're sitting there, you're making no money, and they're making money. So you're actually sitting there, and your front desk person is making more money than you are because you don't have enough people to even pay that person. The second thing is the limit to what you can charge is now based on this person's money mindset. So if they have a bad money mindset, like you could never raise the prices. You know, Nora was working in an office and they hired a new front desk person and they for some reason they were like charging kids like their age, which I think is absurd. And Nora was kind of like, I'm not doing that anymore. Like they're paying full price. If their kid is a patient already, then yes, they can get a family discount, but like not for their initial exam. And the first thing their front desk person said was like, ooh, do you really think people are gonna pay for that? And it's like, first of all, you're my employee. Like, what are you talking about? Like, just do what I say. And second of all, like, man, how hard is that? That like now you're having to not only convince the patient, but you're having to convince the front desk person to be able to raise your prices. So I think that it really does a disservice to have a front desk person that passes off this money conversation that you should be having. Now, especially if you're using care plans and high prices, man, that money conversation should be coming from the doctor. And think about if you've ever bought any high price item in your life, who are you talking to? You're usually talking to like the head person. You're not talking to some like low level kind of sales rep that, if you're at Target, you're just like dealing with that person who's, ringing you up. But if you're buying something expensive, like expensive watch or a car or jewelry, you're talking to the jeweler, the head person who actually either runs the store or is, in a high manager position. So that's how it should be in your office. There should be no problem with having the discussion about money. And the last thing you can do if you're in school right now, just to help practice of getting people to do what you say, is if you're in student clinic, just start having people like write testimonials for you or do a testimonial video. And I know that's uncomfortable for people, but if you can practice right now, getting them to do that, it's super important when you're in practice because like Google reviews, probably the best thing that you could possibly do for your business and it's free. So getting used to like getting people to do what you want to. Video testimonial, that's awesome too cuz like if how people find anything is online. If they're looking online and they're seeing this video testimonial of someone who looks exactly like them and had the exact same sort of issue that they have, they're going to believe that that you're going to help them, that this person is just like them. So you can practice doing that right now. What you can also do is read books. So all the stuff that I talk about on this podcast, like very little of it, maybe 5% is my actual like thoughts. Most of it is just I've learned from mentors, I've read books, I've listened to podcasts, and I take that information and I try to give it to what I think is going to be the best for you to use. Because like there is not really a ton of original thought. Most thought is like processed and then used to how it's going to benefit that person. So, reading books, like I said, Profits First is what I'm reading right now. I love it. I think it's more geared towards if you're owning your business, but just getting your mindset thinking about money and that you should actually be making a profit is a good thing. And if you want to reach out to me, I'd be happy to send my associate reading list over because you got to start focusing on this stuff. I get super irritated when chiropractors keep telling the lie over and over again that all you got to do is just be of service and you'll be successful, which is just nonsense. That's the most ridiculous thing I could possibly think of. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't give the best service and help people and make sure that you are open to, giving back. You should definitely do that. But man, you got to focus on business and you got to focus on your profits or you're just not going to be able to help anybody. So, got to get out and start reading stuff and focusing on this. It's a skill. Business is a skill, selling is a skill, marketing is a skill, and you've got to learn these skills just like how you've had to learn to be a good adjuster. So, I really hope that this podcast is helping you guys and giving you information, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions that you have. You can find me on Instagram at Boulder Atlas Chiropractic. You can find me my website, AlisonBremner.com, and you can fill out a web form and send me some questions. Always opening to answering any of your guys' questions. Thank you so much for listening. Alexis, thank you for this idea tonight because I think it's super important you guys understand that you're worth a lot of money and there's nothing wrong with asking for it. All right, guys, Cultivating Success. We release a podcast the first Monday and third Monday. Hope you enjoyed it. See ya.